What's going on, guys? My name is Richard Moglen, and welcome back to a stock market outlook video brought to you by DeepView. As always, we're going to run through the major indexes, talk about a few key mega-cap stocks, and also cover a few of the names from my previous focus list. A lot of these had really nice moves. Let's sort this by the current change for this week, some gap ups on earnings, and we'll definitely go through and cover the action. So make sure you stick around until the end. And if you're curious about the DeepView platform and what it entails, make sure to click the link down below in the description, as well as popping up right now. We're getting really close to launching, so make sure you visit deepview.com, join the waitlist, and that will give you access to a special presentation that we'll be putting on, explaining the platform, explaining our vision and what it entails, as well as an introductory special offer. So you don't want to miss that. Just click the link down below in the description. With that said, let's dive right into the analysis of the QQQ. And if at any time you do enjoy my analysis, go ahead and leave a like down below. It really helps me out and my channel. And of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos just like this one every single week. All right, with all that said, let's go ahead and dive right into this daily chart. You can see that early on in the week, we did pull back, and then we kind of had a turnaround Thursday where we gapped down and then pushed strongly through the prior day's low. This is called an oops reversal, and it's kind of a key reversal where the expectation is we carry on lower. We had a lot of gap downs and leading names as well on that day, and instead of pushing lower, maybe testing that 50-day SMA, we pushed upward strongly, and you can see retook that low and basically finished with an outside day as well, basically retaking that high and closing very strongly close to that high. And that momentum really carried over to Friday, where once again we had a gap up and a very strong close breaking out of the short-term range. So definitely some positive action to end out this week, and I'd love to see that carry on into next week. And I wouldn't mind seeing a little bit of consolidation, maybe an inside day, short-term pullback into the 21 EMA, and then for it to rally upwards and continue up towards the top of this prior base that we've been forming after this strong run up off the lows. So it's nice to see us hold that 200-day SMA. We basically held it for 2 days, gap below it, retook it, and now we're back above a rising 21 EMA, which is kind of my short-term trend indicator. So very constructive action from the indexes. Yeah, the leadership also acted well, as we'll cover in this video. Moving on to the small caps, the IWM, very similar action, oops reversal here on this Thursday, fall through today. Looks a little bit like a low cheat. You've got kind of a pivot here, but we've got a little bit of work to do before we retest these base highs. Going through the mega caps, let's take a look at Google. This was not looking great, but we kind of hung in there. Didn't make a lower low on Thursday, which is interesting, and strong action really right off the open. And we're right at that 21 EMA 50 SMA confluence to the downside. This is not the strongest stock in the market. You can see we've been in a downtrend for quite some time, and we're not even close to that 200-day SMA, but it's good constructive action from one of the mega caps that is a major weight in the indexes. Meta fared a lot stronger. You can see after this gap up, we consolidated, pulled back into that 21 EMA, pushed higher, formed a little bit of a short-term pivot through this high, and had a nice gap up and go here on this Friday. And really, since we had that EPS basically gap down here, a little U-turn and push higher, this has been actually pretty strong. And we've got another gap up and constructive action so far. So we'll basically have to see whether this can restart a new uptrend. So definitely strong action recently from Meta. Moving on to SMH, the semiconductors ETF. This is kind of one of the leadership groups as of this moment. Nice oops reversal here on Thursday, breakthrough this pivot, and nice action on Friday, finishing right at the highs, although not huge volume here on this index, but we're back above that 21 EMA, which is a good look. And maybe we consolidate a little bit for a few more weeks, let this kind of base develop after this strong run up, but looks like we're putting in another higher low as of this moment, and we continue to trend above a rising 50 SMA. It looks like the 200 SMA is just starting to increase here on this ETF. Moving on to Tesla. This had their news event day. This isn't acting too well, but we retook that 21 EMA and holding above a rising 50 SMA. We're back above rising 21 EMA now, compressing against that 200 SMA, forming a little bit of a short-term base here from about 218 to a low of 185. So as long as we stay in that range, consolidate for a few weeks, and then push higher, I think that's extremely constructive after this huge move off the lows. Nice earnings gap up here within this period, and the highest volume ever as well. And we'll have to see whether this can retake, refind the momentum that it had early on in the previous years. This level around 205 is pretty key. It's the low of this prior base. And you can see just in the past, there's a lot of trading within this area from about 250 down to 180, 185. So it's at a key spot, and it'd be very constructive if it pulls through and pushes higher. Moving on to Microsoft, you can see that this was declining as well, found support at the 50 SMA, and is now back through all the moving averages above a rising 21 EMA just barely for 1 day. So constructive action recently. Nvidia, you can see, didn't look too great after this earnings wrap up. It maybe looked like it was going to retest that 21 EMA, but really nice action on this Thursday and also Friday, pulling through, not on huge volume, but we remain above a rising 21, 50, and now 200 SMA. And lastly, we've got Apple. Extremely strong action today off that 200 SMA area, and we're back above all the moving averages. So in general, things are acting well. Looks like we had a normal pullback and then constructive action the last 2 days in the market. With that said, let's move on to my previous focus list. Let's sort by that current week percent change. So this is the percent change from the open to the close, or the close of last week to the close of this week. And number one is Duolingo. Nice earnings gap up, follow through, and then a little bit of a shakeout today, but constructive close on nice volume. And you can see that this is a really key spot. Basically, it's potentially turning off the bottom here from its institutional due diligence phase and potentially starting a stage 2 uptrend. Really great volume coming in. You can see the average volume increasing here. And what I'd like to see now is for it to calm down, form, a short-term stubby base, and basically continue higher from this point. But really nice push here on volume. Great closing range on these days. Could have bought the HVC here or through the high. And now you're just waiting for that next add-on buy point where you can position in this name and manage risk, basically have it form a higher low setup. AI also had an earnings gap today, held 20 to the downside. So this entire base was holding above 20. That's something that Ray really looks at, a structural base above basically key whole number. Really strong ramp up here, consolidation, pretty short consolidation, and a nice gap up. We aren't above this high yet. And I wouldn't be surprised to see a little bit of back and filling here. A lot of eyes on this name are on this name, but you can see that it's shown the potential for a lot of momentum. So definitely have it on your radar. Look for a spot potentially if this is your style of trade. VTYX also a decent gain this week, just trending above that 21 EMA, pushing into all-time highs, just barely. A little bit of a pickup in volume, which is good to see, but nothing extraordinary, but nice action here on this Thursday after a slight gap down. NRDS, I was surprised to see this actually push higher, kind of wedging higher a little bit. Volume isn't declining too much, but something to keep an eye on is that it's definitely extended at this point above all the moving averages. But like AI is showing a lot of strength off these lows, and at some point it will pull back to the 21 EMA, and that should be a pretty good spot to buy it on a pullback. Lastly, let's go through SGML. Big gap down and strong close here on this Thursday, fall through on Friday on a pickup in volume. Likely you're stopped out here if you bought through this pivot. And actually, lastly, let's bring up XM, just trending higher, but really nice action after this gap up. You're forming out a base here. You've got a pivot right near 17.23. Had a little bit of trouble here pushing through that, but a decline in volume. So I wouldn't mind seeing, one down day, maybe an oops reversal, gap down, close higher than this low, and then a breakout through this level around 17.25. But this has a lot of work to do. You do have some overhead supply to deal with, but no kind of key resistance until 22.5. So we'll have to see how this acts, and I really like the push up on volume. That's pretty much it for the names I wanted to cover. Let me know your thoughts on this week's action down below. And if you have any names that you'd like me to go over tomorrow in my weekly watch list video, let me know in the comment section as well. Thanks again for sticking with me. And if you're watching up to this point, thanks so much. I appreciate you. Leave a like down below. I'd really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks so much. And I'll see you guys in future videos. Take care.